This is iFanboy Pick of the Week, episode 753, brought to you by iFanboy listeners just like you who are washing their hands, wearing their masks, and doing their part. Hello, welcome to iFanboy Pick of the Week, episode 753. My name is Connor Kilpatrick. I am here with Josh Flanagan.
I can confirm that you are Connor Kilpatrick, and I am Josh Flanagan. That's all correct. We can move along.
We like to double source all information.
I had to go to the registrar of deeds just for this show.
Well, we don't like to half-ass it, you know.
No.
We're not known for half-assing anything.
Well, you're not.
We are iFanboy, and every week we read a bunch of comics, and one of us picks their favorite book. We call that the Pick of the Week. We talk about that book, other books from the week, the Patron Pick. Maybe this week we'll do some listener mail. It'll be good. It'll be fun. Everyone needs a little fun in their lives, and that's why we're here.
We're not even doing it for you. Not doing it for you. Doing it for us. We're going to share that fun with you. That's what's going on here, and occasionally we will sell ads against that fun. But
was also
not this week.
On TV again last couple days ago, and I watched it. Spoiler warning, review show. There'll probably be spoilers, although we try to avoid them if possible. But sometimes we can't. This week, Josh had the pick.
Yeah.
Josh.
The pick of the week this week is The Devil's Bride #1 from Vault Comics. It's written by Sebastian Gerner, who you may know from The Shirtless Bear Fighter, which is if nothing else a memorable title. Art by John Bivens, colors by Iris Monahan, and letters by Jeff Powell. So this book was fun, and it was pretty good. But a lot of reason that we're talking about this is that I had nothing. I had nothing this week. Wow. And so then I switched to the mode of, like, what wasn't the best book, but what was the one that I was like, well, this is different than everything else I'm reading, and it's very enjoyable. So I just saw this as a #1, and I thought, all right, sure, I'll try that. I've been into Usagi Yojimbo lately, and I liked Lone Wolf and Cub. Sure, let's read a samurai story. I think the pleasantly surprising thing about it was that, as far as I can tell, there is no supernatural element. So this goes back to all those stories from Dark Horse that we talk about. And it's like, oh, it's just pirates. Right. So this is just samurai. It's off to a good start. 2, like at the very first couple of pages, I thought, oh, this is just going to be more of this crap. But as it kept going, I really did get into it. And then there's a twist at the end that sort of explains what's going on. And I thought, oh, this is really interesting. And I thought basically one of the things I thought was, if Mark Russell had done this in a Red Sonja book, I'd have been all over it. And so, getting through this book, I said, oh, I really enjoyed that. I want to read more of it. And it was a new and different thing from everything else that I had read this week. And basically what you've got is there's when you go into feudal Japan, there's always warring clans. And so there's a big battle. It's very violent and bloody, and then this reddish devil samurai person comes through and saves the day. And then we cut forward in time, and I don't actually know if it's a time jump. Doesn't matter. A drunken jerky samurai comes out of a bar. What do they call them? What would they call them? Not bars. An inn? We'll call it an inn. And we find out that he is supposed to protect these people as they go up over the mountains, but he's kind of an asshole, and he's mean to the lady who's with him. And so out of the...
It's a three-year time jump.
Okay, there you go. And so out of the shadows comes this woman who has one of those big, crazy samurai masks on that goes over the face a little bit that look very strange. But I'd seen them because I'd read a lot of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles as a kid, back when it was really about that stuff. And teaches the man a lesson, basically. Cuts him down, does a bunch of stuff, and then meets the travelers he was supposed to take, and the journey commences. And then the other thing is we go back in time to after the battle, and this is your spoiler. I don't know how to get around this because it's not interesting unless this is the part. The Red Devil Samurai comes back into the tent, and everybody thinks that this is the prince or the emperor, not the emperor, but the new sort of leader of this clan, and he's just a kid, and everybody doubts him, but he comes out and he fights, like a devil. And then we find out that the actual prince is hiding inside a chest inside that tent, and the one who is fighting is his sister. And so they switch places, and he takes off her lady clothes, and she puts on his armor and tells him what to do, to go rally the troops and all that. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. I haven't seen this story, and there's
well, hold on.
okay.
First of all, you didn't see this coming from the cover?
No, I didn't look at the cover.
I mean, you've seen it before, like Eowyn and Lord of the Rings, and I assume this is what Mulan's about.
Not just that it's a man, but there's the switcheroo happening. Like this. So there's like a power struggle or whatever.
They're actively switching now.
Yeah. I mean, either way, I expected nothing of reading this. I thought I'm gonna try this thing. I bought it. I said, hey, and at the end, that's interesting enough that I really want to see how this goes next. And I love tough guy samurai stuff as much as the next. That one person, that Usagi Yojimbo character who Usagi Yojimbo is also very good this week, but this wasn't bunnies. And it was. I gotta say, I think I'm getting a little tired of a lot of the superhero comics that are going on right now. And it was sort of a nice little diversion, and I came to enjoy it more as I was reading through it, and that's kind of always the best way to go. Where we read a lot of books and we're like, okay, we'll try this new issue out. And by the end, you're just like, please make this stop. And there'll be one of those we're talking about later today. So that's where we are. Straight up, samurai story, no zombies or aliens or mystical forces, dead people talking to the past, just sword fighting and some political intrigue. And I'm all right with it. I'm good with it. It was fun.
A couple, I don't know, a month or so ago, we got an email asking why we didn't read more comics from the upstart publishers. One of them was Vault, that was mentioned. And last week we read American Ronin. Was that also Vault? No, that was
that was Upshot.
HMS Pinafore? No, you keep saying Upshot. Upshot's not the publisher. It's like AWS Studio.
Whatever.
And we said because mostly they're pretty boring, and that's what this was.
Yeah.
This was pretty boring. It was very middle of the road for me. I finished it and I was like, well, everything about that was average. And I was pretty shocked to see you picked it. But I could understand why, but I didn't.
I don't necessarily disagree with that as a thing, but I think it had a little something to do with my mood, and I saw a little bit of promise in sort of going forward, because also first issues can be kind of a slog a lot of times anyway, because they're trying to put a lot of things there. So I thought, I want to know what happens in this story next, and that to me, it makes it a successful enough issue. But I like the genre. I haven't read any fun stuff from that genre in a while outside of Usagi Yojimbo. So,
well, I mean, there's not a lot to read. So
yeah, and honestly, like I looked at every other book. It was a pretty light week. I went through everything, and the best I could say about most of the books that they were the same thing that I had liked about them before, but it wasn't bringing anything else to the table. Like I said, it's not like the greatest issue ever. It was really one of those. Oh, I dug this week, and there's something there.
Well, there you go. So it's your pick of the week.
Mm-hmm.
So you're gonna keep reading it.
I am.
Okay. I don't know what my pick would have been. I had several books I could have made the pick. I had a lot of books this week, but definitely in the conversation was Rorschach #1, Tom King, Jorge Fornes, Dave Stewart, Clayton Cowles. And it was interesting because, as with everything to do with Watchmen, there was a hue and a cry. When it was announced, there was a hue and a cry when it came out. I saw people denigrating it online, and I finished it and I thought, I don't know what you would possibly denigrate this book for. It was like the most inoffensive possible story. In fact, if you look at all of Tom King's series, all of his #1 issues is probably the least compelling of all of them.
Yes. You're right.
And not that it's not good, it was very good, but if you look at Mr. Miracle or Strange Adventures or The Sheriff of Babylon or Vision, you probably put it at the bottom in terms of shockingness. Like, nothing shocking happened in this book. It wasn't like he didn't. I don't know. I just try to figure out what the animosity comes from, other than the elemental animosity with anything to do with Watchmen, other than the TV show, apparently.
Oh, I think it's. I mean, I think that's a big part of it, but I also think it's just momentum. Like, it's one of those things. It's one of those moral crusades that a lot of comics folks have taken on, and they can't seem to separate Alan Moore. It's funny because like there's this one thing where like everyone seems to hate Alan Moore now, but
Mm-hmm.
everybody's super into defending the integrity of his work, and
Right.
I think it all of that is somewhat antithetical to the essential nature of superhero and mainstream comic books.
So this is a Black Label miniseries. So, look at it as an Elseworld story where sometime in the present, which is long after the events of Watchmen, a man in a Rorschach costume is killed while supposedly trying to assassinate a presidential candidate along with a young girl who's also in a costume. And so there's an investigator. It's still which is funny because, Watchmen took place in the 80s, but this is like squarely like in the 70s in terms of like hairstyles and clothing.
Yeah, but wasn't there like a cell phone or something? There's
a beeper.
Yeah. Yes. But then, so I noticed the beeper, and I was like, maybe that places me in time. And then later, I think there was another. I think they were talking about the internet.
Well, what I mean by the 70s is the aesthetic is. I don't think
Yes.
it takes place in the 70s.
Right.
I mean,
I agree. Well, but in the comic book, the aesthetic is one of your signposts to know sort of where you are in time. But yes, you're right. It felt like a 70s Redford movie.
It at one point. I don't. They say at some point how long ago it was that Rorschach died.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember what it was, but it was a long time.
You've really got to take notes on these books in order to talk about them at the show, and I don't do that, and so I sound like an idiot. Just thousands. I don't remember he had pants on. Yeah.
So, now there's an investigation about what happened here, who this guy is, because there's no real record of this old man who was shot, who was in his 80s and was very spry. It may or may not be the actual Rorschach who died at the end of Watchmen, and also there's an oblique reference to the events of Oklahoma, which would tie it into the TV show as well. Jorge Fornas, we know, Tom King discovered him, used him on Batman. He's everywhere now. He's terrific. This was one of the best looking books of the week.
Yes, Dave Stewart on colors.
Dave Stewart. Between the two of them, it was just beautiful. It didn't like blow me away.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, if you look at all the number ones, it's probably the least compelling, but it felt very much like a LA noir 70s detective story that happens to revolve around the Watchmen characters. And there'll obviously be a lot more going on here than meets the eye because there's the comic artist who drew the famous pirate comics. Not the one from the book, because in the Watchmen world, pirates are as big as superheroes, and something to do with that. And there's the original Watchmen characters, and who knows. But I was very intrigued by it, and I really enjoyed it.
I wasn't. In that, I just couldn't find a hook into it. Like, it was well done and everything, but I didn't really know the stakes that we were working with. And we don't really know any of the characters because, Rorschach is supposed to be dead, so it's a whole bunch of other people. And this investigator who, I mean, again, you're right, these books build. And so at the beginning, I kind of have to go on faith with them that it will sort of build to a crescendo, which is what all the other ones do. But because of the fact that, like, I've never felt a need for more Rorschach in my life. Mm-hmm. And if I had a protest, it would be that, like, that's a rough character to get behind for all sorts of reasons. But, it's also a story where he died, and he should have. And that was a very compelling and interesting story point. So if you're going to go forward, now comics are made to break these rules, and it has happened many, many times before. But I didn't manage to find anything other than, like, this is a really good-looking and seemingly well-constructed book, but it didn't, like, make me feel anything, I suppose.
And I think that's normal for his first issues. If
Maybe.
you recall, we didn't really find this first issue of Strange Adventures that interesting, and I don't think you liked the first issue of Mr. Miracle. I think there's a lot that he does in the first issue that makes it very vague, and you're not sure what you're reading until later.
And I'm not gonna not read the next one. I'm gonna keep going on it. But yeah. But my excitement level was low even to begin with. In that, I don't think it's a moral imperative that making Watchmen comics is wrong. But it is also, like, it's not super interesting to me That's why I think the show, the HBO series was so. I wasn't excited to see that either, and it was probably 2 or 3 episodes into that before I was like, oh, like I didn't want it. I didn't expect it to be any good, and then when it was, it blew my socks off. I suppose this book could do that. Yeah.
You know what's interesting is that he's been continually knocked for doing everything in 9-panel grids.
Mm-hmm.
And here, I'm looking, and I don't see any 9-panel grids.
There was more than
I see
that, wasn't
15-panel grids. I see 12-panel grids. It's almost like he's thumbing his nose at the criticism by going even nuttier.
Yeah, but on the one book where the thing comes from.
And I'm scrolling. I haven't come across a single 9-panel grid page yet.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there is one in the whole book, which is interesting.
That is interesting. They are all divided into that. No,
it's all gridded.
Yeah, but I mean, so horizontally, they're in that sort of 3
tiers.
Yeah, and so you could split it into 9 panels, but he's just outside of it, which given that it's a Watchmen book, is funny.
I think that is funny.
Yes,
it's the one place that you would expect it, and he's not doing it. He's going even crazier.
Yeah.
Yep. Like I said, I didn't finish it and go, wow, that was amazing. I finished it and that was interesting and it was beautiful, and I'm really interested to see more. But that's why I was sort of mystified by people's reaction to it, which I guess is.
I mean, the I don't think the content has anything to do with any of the protestations. I think because at the end of the day, the content's the only thing that matters. I mean, everybody talked about when we did Before Watchmen, the huge complaint was, you can't do this or whatever. And then like the book started and it's like, oh, this won't matter. None of these are memorable except for a couple of them. Right. And it's true. Like to this day, I don't think I read more than the first issue or 2 of most of them.
Yeah. And they came out and the world didn't end.
They didn't end. And also they made no impact. Like they did not alter, tarnish, improve, affect the reputation or sort of general thinking about Watchmen as a nope. They came and they went, and that was it. It made no impact. Even the Darwin stories, which I liked, pretty much they're not part of the conversation.
No.
And fine, but that this is what comics does. Comics, it's mainstream superhero comics. They buy a thing, and then they try to wring as much as they can out of it, and some of it might be good, and most of it won't be. And you'll move along, and
you wouldn't have this book if that show wasn't so popular.
Sure, and again, that show should have been awful. It should have been a thing, But that show really cared about the stuff it came from, and it was just excellent, and that will be part of this, and in a good way. And it's one of those things that I don't feel terrible for Alan Moore in this. I just don't. Like he did this book. It was work for hire. Maybe he had some ownership of it, but he didn't own it. And if you're Warner Brothers, DC, AT&T, whoever, you'd be foolish not to try to capitalize on this property that you own. It would be ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
And but not everything has to be War and Peace. Anyway, on this issue, like I just didn't really know what to make of it yet. It didn't really grab me one way or the other. So
I think that's definitely a thing. I mean, I think that's a thing with his books, which is interesting.
But like when it was Adam Strange, I was like, I'm interested in this character. I really want to see what he's going to do with it. When it was Mr. Miracle, same thing. When it was the Vision, the same. Although I was all in for the Vision from moment one. But I don't know, those characters tickle my fancy. Rorschach doesn't.
Well, that's to me that's the interesting thing is what is this guy who is politically way different than Rorschach going to bring to the table if in fact it is Rorschach. And again, I'm looking at this as an Elseworld story. If it turns out to be actually Walter Kovac?
Yes.
Is that Rorschach's name? If it turns out to be actual Walter Korvac.
The Walter Korvac saga.
With Marvel. If it turns out to actually be him, I'm not going to get upset about it because I'm not looking at it as quote unquote in continuity with Watchmen. I'm just looking at it as an entertaining comic book that I'm hopefully going to read.
Yeah.
I also could have made a case for Captain America 24, Ta-Nehisi Coates, Daniel Acuna.
This
Joe
was
Caramagna.
close out of the mainstream stuff. Out of the Marvel stuff, this was probably my second. Would have been my go-to.
We're barreling towards, I think, where he's been trying to get this whole time, which is issue 24. I'm assuming 25 is the big confrontation where Red Skull will return as he has been clawing his way back into reality from the head of Alexander Lukin.
Mm-hmm.
And also, we've in the last issue, Sharon was revived as a young woman again, and now apparently she's triathlon. She has enhanced abilities. She has like the power in her of all the previous people who were also whatevered.
Yeah, she absorbed by the supervillain who absorbs the energies of other people.
Right, so she has like their combined power in her. So she's stronger, she's faster, she's more agile. And so I was like, hey, it's triathlon.
She also has their rage and frustration.
Yeah,
which
she's back, but she's not quite the same. She's different.
She's been woke.
So I love this. I love the issue. I love the skull stuff with the Lukins. I love the sparring. And
Did you like the boning? Because there was boning in this one. It's just like she's got the lust of all those people in her too. There were a lot of things to like about this, and this might have been the best Ta-Nehisi Coates Captain America I've read.
Yep.
As he's starting to get to that.
This arc has been great, but this issue in particular was good.
No, you're absolutely right, and I like sort of where the character's going. I like Steve's role in this. He's like, this is good chicken. Why have we never had this chicken before? and there really was a tension in the way that he was like, well, what if we just, like have this relationship? And it sounded like she was going to break up with him, but that wasn't what happened, and I liked that.
Well, he's had, Sharon's been the love of his life, even when she was in Dimension Z and came out as older. They stayed together in a relationship. And now that she's back to being young, she's a little different. And so I think he's a little off. He's, they're sparring, they're having sex, they're eating fried chicken he's never had before. It's almost like being in a new relationship with someone.
Yeah.
And I think you can tell he's a little bit off. It's like, what is actually going on here?
Yeah. I like, so here comes a very big compliment and then a slight detraction. I'm reading this book. I'm a little ways through and I go, wait, this art is great. Is this, flips back to the beginning. It is Acuna. I haven't seen Acuna in a while.
Yeah.
I don't know where he's been, but he's always been one of my favorites. And it looked a little different than what I was used to from him, but I sort of got used to it. And I really like the way that he was drawing Sharon. Like at the beginning, she's like sort of leaning over and she's got sort of big shoulders and she's not all lithe and shit. And then the last page, there's a reveal. I didn't like the last page, but because she's going to get some kind of Iron Man armor and her body is a completely different person.
Yeah, it was a little inconsistent.
I was like, whose big ass is that? That's...
Steve's face keeps changing throughout the book.
But, yeah, there was some weird Lucan faces, but I accept that with an Acuna. I mean, but on a style standpoint, he really is one of my favorite artists, and he's great on Cap.
That last page is pretty egregious.
Yeah, it's like she's short, she's
sort of stocky.
Yeah, it's a completely different person.
Yeah, but I really like this. I mean, I've been trying so hard with Ta-Nehisi Coates' Cap. I just wanted to love it. And I'm finally getting to that point. I think he's finally settled into the character in the worlds, and I'm excited for them.
It's very interesting. The sort of place where Ta-Nehisi Coates' politics come together with Captain America, and that is a tension there. I think, which can be very interesting and could lead to great stories, but could also not. And I think it's been difficult to tell where he's going. I think the writer would probably say
they've also still been hamstrung by this Captain America world that only exists in his book, which is where he's a bad guy to the world, which we've been talking about since the very beginning. It's been terrible.
Yes,
and that's not really his fault. That's the fault of the event from this book's.
Yes, but he also stuck with it. He could have dropped it at some point. I think
maybe
it's
depends on how much editorial, but there is.
It's true.
Captain America Captain Marvel 22. Kelly Thompson, Lee Garbett, Tamra Bonvillain, and Clayton this is another book I could have made pick of the week. It's funny because so this is the start of a new arc called The New World, and this book is kind of Kelly Thompson seems to like teams.
Mhm.
Even when she has a solo book, she ends up putting a family of characters around that character. So this book is sort of settled into Captain Marvel, War Machine, and Spider-Woman and Hazmat, because that's sort of her family, and so they've been in this book pretty consistently. And so here they're on a mission to find this alien signal in the woods, and they find it's this giant ship stuck in the trees, so they go to investigate, and some tentacles shoot out of the ship, and they grab Carol, and then she gets zapped and wakes up in like a post-apocalyptic snowy Manhattan. And I thought, didn't we just put her in an alternate reality in the very beginning of the series? Like, I realized that was 20 issues ago, but they come out so often it feels like it just happened. But
go ahead.
The problem is this was awesome. This is
the problem
she gets into the future. She's with all the kids of the heroes. She's with Jerry, Spider-Woman's kid, who wears like a modified version of her costume with a furry cape because it's cold because the sun got fucked up. And she's with a bunch of the kids, and also a Phantom X, and also some other characters who are still around. Emma Frost is permanently in her diamond body, and it was awesome, even if the Lee Garbett art, who I really like, wasn't the best at showing older characters, which a lot of artists are just not good at. They have their models and they sort of stick with them.
Mm-hmm.
So when a character would show up who was supposed to be older, except for Spider-Woman, like there's one point where Luke Cage shows up, it's just like he does not look like he's supposed to be 30 years older than he is now. But I love these kind of stories, these alternate future takes, these, what could possibly happen in the future. And, I like seeing all the kids. If you follow this sort of world, you're seeing a lot of, characters you think might be together with their kids. And, at one point there's Katie Barton, who's, Clint's kid with somebody. And I just love that stuff. I love that sort of legacy aspect of the future. The heroes keep on going with their children, and it was fun. I mean, at first I was like, again, but then by the end of it, I was like, that was awesome. I can't wait for the next issue. So
I've had a stack of these piled up because I wanted to catch up because I want to read them. Yeah, I know, which is why I just haven't. But boy, I like Lee Garbett. There's a page on page 5, where it's Spider-Woman like kind of upside down in a tree.
Yeah,
that is a lovely composition of a whole page, and
around the panels, her body sort of wraps around the panel in between the panels. It's a good page.
And then that sort of next panel after that, her silhouette is dropping down in the background. I mean, it's a really nice drawing. Also, that's great. I mean,
if you've got a stack of these, and you honestly, you can just jump on here. This is the start.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I was going this way, but yeah, I really do want to catch up to it. And it's funny,
the characters, the relationships.
Yeah, and you said that the thing about having that family. I feel like Kelly wants to have those characters be able to bounce off of each other because I think that makes it a lot easier to get through the story. And in Luke Cage's defense, he has impenetrable skin, so that also toxics. And
maybe that's part of his power. He doesn't age.
Yeah.
But even in Kelly's Black Widow book, she's got Hawkeye and Winter Soldier to bounce off of. I think she's really good at these characters sort of, being, bantery with each other.
Yeah.
And so I really like this a lot. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah,
and
cool.
I also, Luke Cage showing up was a spoiler because he was thought to be dead earlier in the issue, but still.
That's impossible. It's one of those things that Captain Marvel should have always been at the forefront of the superhero movie thing. Like, she's such a great character, and she has been. I mean, like I want to think Kurt Busiek's Avengers stuff in the late '90s. I was like, oh, this character's great. She was Warbird then, but whatever. Making her front and center in so much of the Marvel stuff has always been a good idea. And through I think it was Civil War too. Like she's up there with the big folks,
for sure.
And I really want to. Yeah, I want to get caught up. I keep grabbing them every week, but I was like 20 issues behind, and I was like, but
Yeah, and
I will.
there's been good arcs. There's been arcs that have been fine.
Mhm.
You know, it's 22 issues. You've got a lot to deal with here, but I enjoyed this one.
Super.
Yeah, and you don't need to know much more to jump on here.
No, I don't think so. I'll read this one. Although I just sort of flip through it and I kind of get what happens.
It's all right.
Fine. Hey, one of the things that keeps this train going, other than our inability to not do it, is the folks over at patreon.com/iFanboy. That's right, the patrons. The patrons make many of these things possible, and we want to thank the people who do that. But also, you've been thinking, how can I help out? I like this thing that happens, and I feel like I'm not pulling my weight. Well, friend, I'm going to talk to you like a Joe Biden text. Friend, in a minute, I'm going to ask you for a donation. But first...
Oh, man.
I hate to do this. I really, truly do. But you guys should know that Connor and I have made up an arbitrary fundraising deadline that ends tonight. And so you're going to need to... We need your support right now. And then tomorrow there will be another arbitrary deadline, which doesn't mean anything to me or you. But you know, we have to close out this week and this month and this quarter strong.
Right.
So
we're going to get fired.
I mean, it's totally... Get over to iFanboy. I'm sorry, patreon.com/iFanboy. You will see the goals there. You will see the things that have happened. Our next stretch goal is some sort of G.I. Joe corner show. And then after that, the next goal would be a quarterly barbecue show, which is the thing we talked about. But there's so much that everybody has accomplished already. Also, if you like the media explodes, you might want to jump on or back on.
Yeah.
Yeah, well.
We got close to the edge of the media splits going away again, but then we ticked back up a little bit. So
right.
probably okay, but you know, there's always the chance those shows go backwards. I mean, a lot of the shows we do every month that you listen to are opened by the patrons, and if the support doesn't remain, then the shows go away. That's just the way it works.
But you know, like looking at the other side, the people who are there, the people who are, you know, there's Talksplodes, there's Booksplodes, there's monthly hangouts. We've opened those up to everybody, but you guys made that possible. That's a thing. That's the thing that's happening.
I sounded like the most casual mafia boss there.
Yeah.
It'd be a shame if something happened in this podcast you like. It's a nice podcast you got here.
Listen, friend. That's
a nice Booksplode.
Yeah. Then if you want some merch, would you like some merch? You can get over to ifanboy.threadless.com. There are shirts, sweatshirts, tank tops, baby clothes, shower curtains, phone cases, all of the things that they can print on. If they print on them, you can have one of our 8 designs on one of those items, and you can do that. For the newest design, the most recent one, Stay Home and Read Comics, a portion of all those sales will go to the Comic Book United Fund to help out retailers and such during these horrible times we live in.
Which are not over, and are still continuing.
Not by a long shot.
Nope.
ifanboy.com/support is a much more direct means of doing so. If you're like, hey, I want to drop something in the tip jar, I want to show my support, you can go over to the direct donation link at PayPal. And then finally over at amazon.com/ifanboy, you will find links to buy all the Booksplode books and things like that we talk about, and a general link for you to get to Amazon. So if you're just going to do some shopping there and you would like to help us out and get a portion of it, that's a way to do that. So thank you to everybody who does any and all of those things. Thank you, friend.
Thank you, friendo.
So in light of trying new things, I read Commanders in Crisis #1 from Image Comics. This is written by Steve Orlando, a writer whose work I've never enjoyed in any capacity. But I thought maybe without the shackles and constraints of DC continuity and history, something new will emerge.
How'd that go for you?
Arise. I barely made it through this. And I just wanted to point out, like, I made the attempt, and I think it's really odd that Image Comics, who doesn't or didn't, do superhero stories, like at one point it was folly to pitch them a superhero story.
Right.
Other than just a couple, but apparently if you are, a guy who does, the Justice League, then you can do that at Image, but I don't know why they would want that. And I don't understand. Steve Orlando clearly loves superheroes. Mm-hmm. But as such, like, this was like any book. It was, I think the sort of structure, quality level, skill, those things were all pretty good and high, but as sort of a bunch of concepts, like it just didn't stand out in any way. And I was, I really wanted to give it the benefit of the doubt. And I think there are interesting concepts in here, but at the end of the day, it was like a middling Wildstorm series.
What was the pitch?
There's a bunch of superheroes. It's not unlike The Boys almost, but without any of the horrible stuff. So you've got, sort of these new kinds of superheroes, and it's a team, and they come along, and then as you go through it, I'm going to go ahead and give away the premise because that's all. Like at the end of it, basically the idea is that all of these superheroes are the last survivors of their Earth, and we are now on the last Earth. So he's taken the multiverse.
So it's in the title, Crisis.
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah. I mean, I really, I try to give it a shot, but whatever trip Orlando's on is not my trip. But if you like the stuff that he's doing over at DC, you might very well like this. It
wasn't badly done.
No, it totally wasn't. But I just thought, well, maybe it's a new take. Maybe it's a different thing. I barely made it.
The Flash 763, I checked it on because, it's a new writer, new creative team.
Oh wow.
And so I was like,
who is that?
Well, let's see what happens. There was no big announcement. You think after however many years Josh Williamson was on Flash, they would have been like, hey, here's a new team. And I don't know if this is the new team or just an issue, but this is written by Kevin Shinnick, who is a Robot Chicken writer, which I was not surprised to find out. Drawn by Clayton Henry, who Josh loves. And this was just a superhero story. It was really refreshing. Also, I could have possibly made the case for this. This was really enjoyable because I'm just scrolling to the end. It's basically like a one shot. There's a little cliffhanger that's going to lead to more, but it's not really like it's a self-contained story. It starts and it ends by the end. So basically, the trickster somehow steals the Flash's ring and uses it for business purposes. Like he has an arcade that he uses to trick out to be all like the Flash, and the Flash tries to rough him up, and the cops are like, he's not doing anything wrong. He's running a business. And so his Flash has got to figure out how to get his ring back, and also thwart what are probably evil plans by the trickster while also doing. But the problem is he's not actually doing anything overtly illegal. Mm-hmm. It was just a one shot. It was a lot of fun. Clayton Henry's terrific, and it was really refreshing after 5 years of the Flash stories to just sort of do one that is fun and doesn't really have a lot of weight to it.
I wonder if this is a start of a new thing, or like they're just filling a little time until they can get.
Yeah, I don't know.
Thing.
It's a great question. We'll see, I guess, going forward. But it was Kevin Shinnick is not a name I've ever heard before. Although apparently he's written some comics. And it was totally good. It was fine. It was good.
What do I know Clayton Henry from? You said I love him, and I didn't remember who it was.
He just did that Batman Superman story.
Oh right, yeah, I do like this. I mean, I'm looking at it, and I was like, yeah, I do like this. But cool, that's fun. Yep. Hey, let's go to Star Wars Corner.
Hey, we haven't been here in a while.
We haven't.
There's cobwebs.
Yeah, it's space cobwebs, but still.
Yeah. Those are the worst.
Yeah, so this is the Darth Vader book, and the reason I wasn't reading this series, the reason that I read it was that I didn't realize it was Darth Vader. I just thought it was the next Star Wars issue. And so I started, and they started talking about Padme, and I was like, oh no, this is the one I stopped reading. Because that was the thing. The first 5 issues, I guess, were the arc where, I don't know, because I only read I got annoyed that it was about, like, is Padme alive, but it's actually Sabe or whatever. And I said, I'm not reading this. But what this one is basically Palpatine recognizing that because of that last story, there's still weakness in Darth Vader because he still cares about, whoever the lady is.
Right.
And Palpatine just fucks him up. He's trying to show him. He's like, you think you're tough? And he uses the Force. He lifts him up. He chokes him. He's like, you choked all these other people. Check this out. And then he crushes all of his robot arms and drops him off on Mustafar. And he's like, yikes. You can't use the Force and you can't use your lightsaber. Good luck getting back. And I was like, shit, that's harsh. It wasn't reinventing the wheel or anything, right. But it was kind of fun. And it's one of those things that it doesn't really affect any of the plots or the stories or the background. It's just like, boy, the relationship between the Dark Lord and the Sith leader, it's a problem.
Not healthy.
No, it isn't. And so, it was kind of fun and not, unexpected, I guess, in that I hadn't planned to read it, and then I hadn't planned to keep reading it, and then I kept going, and it was fun. I kind of like the Empire stories that are about just seeing how shitty I loved, there was a Grand Moff Tarkin storyline, where it's like, whew, he's a bad dude,
Right.
It just shores up the fact that, we've been told forever that these characters are super evil, but every once in a while we get to see it. And it's not even about hurting innocent people. They're shitty to each other. And that's fun too.
So is it enough to get you back on this series?
Yeah, you know what? I might. Yeah. Vader fights with those Crimson Guard guys who never did anything. That was fun too. It's a good time. I dug the art. I liked it.
So those are the comics we want to talk about. But at patreon.com/iFanboy, you can vote to add a book to the rundown. And this week, the winner was Warhammer 40,000, Marneus Calgar, #1. A licensed comic from Marvel.
Or, parentheses, we really are not trying to bring in any new readers whatsoever.
Written by Kieran Gillen, who is a noted, avid tabletop gamer. And art by Jason Burrows, who we last saw on Moon Knight. Color by Hava Tartaglia. And letters by the omnipresent Clayton Cowles. And, yeah. You ever play Warhammer 40,000, Josh?
No. I've seen it at a distance in stores.
Yeah, it's a very popular tabletop series.
Yeah, it's been around forever.
Other media as well.
Mm-hmm.
I've played tabletop book games. I think once or twice Dungeons and Dragons. There was a period of time in high school where my friends and I played Star Wars role tabletop a lot, but never Warhammer.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. All right, first of all, Jason Burrows is good. I like his art a lot. It really worked here. I thought the book looked really good. The characters were interesting. I think there's a lot of giant mecha not mecha, but there's a lot of giant Space Marine armor here, and it looked cool. And the battle scenes are cool.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why I'd want to keep reading this after reading the first issue.
Well, I guess I was pleasantly. First of all, there was a thing where it was going to be this book or Rorschach, and I was like, we're going to read Rorschach. And so at the I was like, well, I'm pulling for Warhammer because same reason I'm talking about the pick of the week. I was like, all right, give me something different, give me something new. Let's try it. And then I get to it, and that title just doesn't fuck around. It's just like,
No.
just now you were about to read it out loud, and I started laughing. I was like, wow, they're like, we're only going after these people. Like,
Right.
they're just like, maybe we can get Warhammer people to read comics, and that's all that they were trying to do. It wasn't about bringing Warhammer to the masses.
Yeah.
Fine. And I saw Kieran Gillen, and I thought, oh, he loves this shit. And then I saw Jason Burrows, and I was like, or Burrows, and I was like, he's great. This will at least look cool, and it totally did.
Yep.
And
Like they didn't skimp on the talent.
no, and so that was interesting all on its own.
Yep.
And as you get into it, the story, it did what the title and the cover did. It was like, this is what it is, and like Gillen in his full glory,
Oh, you can tell he's having a ball. The problem for me was, as someone who doesn't know the world, I didn't know what the hell was going on, what the stakes were. I guess the idea is this world this universe is a perpetual war, but so we have this Marneus Calgar character who was like the baddest ass space marine.
Mm-hmm.
And we see him in the quote unquote present as an older man with gray hair in his War Marine outfit, leading his battalion with his C-3PO-esque sidekick, who's chronicling his adventures. And then we flash back centuries earlier to him as a child, so that was confusing because I don't know the world. Do the people here live for hundreds of years? When earlier we said at some point it says like the human lifespan is like 50. Like it was like 35 was like the average lifespan, but so that was a little confusing. And then, so I guess it's a combination of his origin story, because we're going to see him train to become a space marine while also seeing him as a space marine. I just didn't know anything else beyond that.
Mhm.
And I don't know if it was compelling enough to want me to keep reading it.
I think you're
I'm
right.
not knocking it. It
No,
was not a bad comic.
no,
I was like, I don't know what's going on.
No,
here.
that's totally
There's a lot of jargon.
I think that I appreciated this on the level of it was what it was. It wasn't trying to be anything else, and I feel like if you like this, you would really like it. But also, there was just simply a level of like these people seem to be having fun with this, and I don't really like it or care, but I can appreciate that much about it, I guess. I really liked the flashback stuff way more than the present stuff. Which is the building of the warrior, the doing whatever, and
well, I mean, it's you can understand the stakes of that particular story.
Exactly.
This kid really wants to be a space marine, and his friends are assholes. Whereas in the present day, I was like, why are we? Who's being shot? What's a heretic? Like, give me something. Give me just a nibble. If I don't know these, if I haven't read all the source books and all the from the game itself, give me just a nibble of what the fuck's going on here.
Well, I think some of it was there, but again, you had to work for it. I think if you remember, Gil, I mean, it was based sort of on the Roman Empire, sort of. It sounded like, so the heretics is sort of anybody who's not part of their thing. And then there was a Greek thing where his friends, and I had trouble knowing exactly, but they were talking about the Helots, which is like a Spartan thing. And remember a long time ago, Gillen did some 3 or 4 issue Spartan series.
3.
Yeah. That was so. There's he was just reveling. I can almost see Jamie McKelvey rolling his eyes from here. It was So I think I kind of enjoyed reading it, but didn't really like it, and I'm not going to read more. That's kind of, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
If that makes sense. Like every once in a while, you'll see a band like a cover band. You're like, oh, those guys are having a lot of fun. All right, let's go. Like I'm happy for them. But I don't know if that translates into a good rating.
I'm more likely to want to try the tabletop game than I am read a more comic. And I guess in that sense,
whoever
whoever paid for this is happy because that's what they want. They want you to spend money on their products. Mm-hmm. Again, it wasn't bad. I was just like,
no.
I just wish I had more of a lifeline into what was going on here and why anything matters. But it's also the first issue.
Yeah.
The question is, Josh.
No.
Will you be sticking with?
No. They didn't try to get me at all. There was no attempt. Like you had to be in.
You have to respect that.
This is like take some. Okay, I am a fan of the rock band Dinosaur Jr. Mm-hmm. I know that if they come out with a new album that is great, you don't want to listen to it. It's just for me and people like me. Like, where should I start? I was like, I don't know. You probably won't like it. This is like that.
Right.
It is what it is. It's for the people it's for, and God bless them.
Ratings out of 5.
3? I don't. Yeah. Whatever. Throw a dart.
Dart was terrific. Gillen's having a ball. I'll throw him a 3.
There's a guy making his way in comics his way. You got to give him that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What do you do? I do ancient Roman Greece. I do RPG.
And occasionally Star Wars.
Yeah. Fuck yeah, dude. Go for it. I don't understand a damn thing he does.
Musical magic.
Yep.
Fantasy shit.
That's been a bit of while. Yeah, you're right.
Patreon.com/iFanboy. Every patron can vote to add a book to the rundown, and we always love watching the votes as they come in. We have our little Google sheet. We get to see them come in live, and it's a lot of fun. If you give it the $5 or higher level, though, you get your own superpower live on the show, like these two fine gentlemen.
Charles Taggart has power over colloidal substances.
Over colloidal substances.
That was a fat lip problem more than anything else. Over colloidal substances. So if it's liquid or a solid, he's got nothing going on with it. But pudding, he can move pudding around like Magneto does metal.
Okay.
Jello.
Why don't you explain to people what that word means who may not know?
Well, if I get this wrong, then I'm going to get an email from Ryan in moments.
You're going to get it anyway.
Sure. Why are you doing this to me?
It's
My
pudding-like.
understand is that it's not liquid, it's not a solid, it's that the things that are in the middle of that. So I don't know that I have the words to describe it other than say pudding.
What about wet
hair
cement?
gel? I don't know if that is because because like wet cement is like different parts of things mushed together.
Mm.
Like it's like there's the liquidy bits and then there's the solid bits and then
Right.
that helps them move. I'm not really sure where the line is that it has to be mixed.
So he controls the substance. He doesn't create. He can't make me like a chocolate pie, but
no.
he could move.
Yeah, he can manipulate it. He has. Yeah. Well. Yeah. No, he can't control the level of colloidalism. I don't think. So
And he can't aerate it. He can't turn it into like mousse.
Well, not. I mean, he could, but just the normal way that anybody would. He's not able. He can use a mixer. But like say that just say for example, you're having breakfast, you're with Charles. Oops, I've knocked over my yogurt, and he magnetos that shit. He's like sucks it back up into the container and no mess to clean up.
Yogurt's also colloidal.
Yeah, and also, like if that yogurt dries out, it's going to be hard to clean up.
Sure.
Yeah. Go on.
Having Quidor is super absorbent.
Well, I'm seeing a team up opportunity here.
So he, if you spilled some water, he just put his hand on it and it would just absorb all into him.
Does he keep that? Does he have to pee afterwards?
Yeah, later on, it's like, ooh.
And is it his whole body or just his hands?
No, it's the whole body. The great thing about it is
I'm already seeing benefits.
He has terrific skin
Mm-hmm.
because he's just constantly moisturized, and he's full of liquids. But
he's terrible on car trips, though.
He's constantly having to go to the bathroom.
Here's the question: Is it passive or active? Like, is he always like if you're in the car with him afterwards, you're like, I'm so dry, and he's like, I'm feeling good.
It's passive, unfortunately, for Kevin.
Ooh, that's rough. So all his shit's gonna dry out.
Yeah, and if he's walking through the rain,
mm-hmm.
He really has to pee.
I think that I changed this on you, and then you went with it.
Like, forget swimming.
Where'd the lake go?
You're just like, oh God, where's the bathroom?
You've cursed poor Kevin.
Sometimes it's a curse.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's a curse. Wow, we got punchy at the end of the show.
Ah, that's good. It's good. It's real good.
So it's a good time to dive into 2 serious emails.
Yes.
Seth M writes and says, how come you guys don't keep up with comic book news? It's not a criticism, more of a curiosity. We say it a lot that we don't. And here's the thing is, if you're new to iFanboy in the last 7 years, we spent 13 years covering the comics news on our website. 13 years. So we are veterans of the comics news game. And I would say, humbly, that we know it pretty well. It hasn't really changed since we stopped doing it in 2013. And the reason is because there isn't really any comic book news. It's all public relations.
It doesn't matter. It's marketing and sales, and everything else is outside of that scope. Isn't all that compelling or interesting. Occasionally, sure.
By accident. And there's often good interviews. Josh still does great interviews with creators, but like 90% of what you see, if you lined up all the comic news sites on one screen, you would see the same headlines in different versions because all it is Marvel, DC, Image, Dark Horse, etc. send out a press release. These sites take them, rewrite them, and put them up.
So creator is on a book. Such and such character is coming back. Event is coming. Publishing schedule, publishing plan, blah blah blah.
It's fine if you like it, but it's just it's not interesting. And also, comics live on a 3-month sales cycle, so
yeah, that's true.
They're trying to get you to buy and be interested in comics happening 3 months from now, and I don't want to know what's happening 3 months from now. It's one of the reasons why I hated previews. Was that I think previews broke the industry, having previews widely available, because it started off as a catalog for the stores to order their content, and then they started giving it to the customers to order 3 months ahead of time. And now everybody who read it knew what was coming 3 months ahead, so no one really cared about what was happening now. They were always looking 3 months down the road.
Mm-hmm.
It was constantly like, what's get to that point, and no one ever cared about what was happening right in front of them. So I think it's actually detrimental to enjoying comics, I think, to know what's constantly coming. I enjoy comics reading way more not knowing, because again, when we were doing iFanboy full time as a going concern, and we didn't have any choice, we constantly knew what was coming. So it was not, it made the reading less enjoyable. Now I don't know what the hell's coming. I don't know who this Kevin Shinnick guy is writing for Flash. I don't know if he was announced as the writer of Flash. I don't know what his plans are, if he's even the writer of Flash. I just know that I picked up the book and I was like, oh shit, who's this guy?
And I'll tell you something, I know even less than Connor does.
Right, because I'll occasionally look to make sure no one important has died.
Yeah. And so this is the other thing. So there's that sales and marketing thing. And then the other side of it is rumors and personal like junk. And listen, it's interesting, sort of, but it's, picking out anything of that actually means anything is pretty tough. And then it also, it's a little sleazy to me. Like, it feels a lot like people don't just like comics. They like the world around them and everything, and they want to feel like they're inside that, so that all the people on the internet can talk about, well, what's really going on. It's just that it's speculation, and it's not the greatest part of the industry, and I tend to not like to focus on it. Now, listen, I'm not immune to being hearing gossip and being like, ooh, but because I know a lot of people. I know, and it's kind of interesting, and we've met people we don't like. We've met people we do. For example, a couple of, I think this is actually a real story. When Tom King came out and said, I'm not going to work with Jay Lee, and Jay Lee was like, I don't know anything about this. That was interesting because of several reasons. It brought up the question of where do we draw the line at how we talk about those people whose name I'm not saying. What is the reasonable approach? Is Jay Lee, is his ignorance an excuse? Did Tom King go too far? How do we, promote our comics? That's kind of interesting. The bit of, there was another one like that. The thing with Dynamite, working with those same people. I think there's reporting to be done around those. And then finally, the last bit, why not? Because all of the news that is anything like actual news comes from about 2 or 3 people, and they've been doing it for years, and I don't really think they're very good at it.
It's just not. It's 90% press releases, and I get it.
Yes.
It's entertainment journalism. All entertainment journalism is 90% press releases. TV journalism, movie journalism. But for instance, it's always fun to me because we're on several several press release lists. So I get the HBO Max press releases. Mm-hmm. And it's I go 3, 2, 1, and then I get the deadline email of the rewritten press release. It's that's what entertainment journalism is. It's just not that exciting. I don't find any benefit to my comic reading to be kept giving up on the news. It doesn't make it better; it makes it worse.
It's also just incredibly repetitive. Once you start ignoring it, you realize that you're not missing anything.
Yeah.
And
occasionally, when something does happen that's important, it breaks through, and someone sees it, but for the most part, it's movie stills.
Yeah.
It's just not interesting to me. You may find it interesting, and that's we're in a different position where we were inside of the bubble for a long time, so we were there. So if you're not inside the bubble and you want to be inside the bubble, then you might find it more interesting than we do.
All right, let's do one more. Nick G writes in and said, I just got finished with episode 750. And something Connor said stood out to me. He touched on how we should focus our ire on pirators to help save the medium. As a former pirater, I'd like to disagree. I'd like to point out right now, as the person reading this question, that I'm giving him his moment. People who pirate do it out of necessity, not preference. When I had a low-paying job, I got back into comics by illegally downloading them. When I got a better paying job, I started going to my LCS and my collection started. I have since stopped getting single issues and moved to trades and commissions from artists. My question is, if the pirating stopped, do you actually think those people would pay for issues? And do you think that would make the industry that much more profitable?
I do want to say that I didn't say we should focus on ire to help save the medium. I was drunkenly joking that digital people and print people should stop fighting and focus their energy on the pirators, and it was mostly a drunken joke. But I never said to help save the medium. That was not something that came out of my mouth. Let's take his last question. So I do want to preface this by saying everything we're about to say is not coming from a high horse of piety. We've all pirated things, especially in the early go-go days of Napster. I certainly pirated music for a couple of years and then stopped, and I've not pirated anything in well over 15 years. Never pirated comics, but music for certain.
I have pirated comics that I already own so that I didn't have to scan them. I don't know if that's okay or not.
For the show.
Yeah.
So
they're better at scanning than me.
So, you're not going to get us to agree. We used to have giant fights on the website that we just talked about when we would do stories about pirating. So the questions, do you think if people actually stop pirating, they'd pay for comics? No, I don't. I think some would. I think there's a small percentage would, but I don't think it's like suddenly every pirater would stop buying comics. I don't think that's. I think it's just people taking free stuff.
Yes.
Would the industry be more profitable? Like a tiny bit, but not noticeably.
Agreed.
Because again, I think it's just people taking free stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's not people. I mean, there's a small percentage like Nick who stop pirating and become legal buyers, but I think most people are just taking free stuff that's out there on the internet. And those numbers, if you see the pirating sites, dwarf the sales of the actual sales of the books. I don't think suddenly all the books would quadruple in revenue. I'm sorry. I mean, it's you're never going to get me to say that it's okay to illegally download something.
No, and I mean the thing at the beginning, I think, was basically is people who do it pirate out of necessity, not preference, or basically the idea is I didn't have enough money, but I wanted it. Well,
right.
That doesn't work with any product in the world. It doesn't. You can't. Well, I really want that Porsche. I can't have it. I can't afford it. Now, many questions of the economic society and fairness and blah, blah, blah. Not to do with that. You want a thing and you can't pay for it, so you found a way to take that thing. And I will tell you right now where this whole thing falls apart. I stopped buying single issues. I moved to trades and commissions from artists. Talk to any of those artists you get a commission from and ask them if they're okay with you pirating comics because you couldn't afford them. Mm-hmm. Not a single one is going to see you as anything but somebody who is taking away from their livelihood. Because you've got 1 million people downloading comics. If 10,000 of those people, a tiny fraction, paid for some of those comics, that makes the difference between making a living or not, especially for independent comics.
Or cancellation or not.
Cancellation or not. Like, it's infinitesimal. And while most of that is not directly harmful, it creates a culture of harm, and it's stealing. And I say that because these are not rich people. This is, I mean, I'm not saying it's any more okay if you do it with a big movie. It isn't. But nope. I know that the margins of making a living on comics are so thin, and especially for people who are trying to make a living doing independent comics, especially through the 2000s, this was really detrimental to them. And I think of all of the creator-owned series and stuff that might have survived or lived longer, had some more people bought it. But they didn't have to because somebody came along and scanned all the comics and put them up on the internet for quote-unquote free. And I'm never going to be okay with that.
Comics aren't food.
Exactly. Yes.
I'm you can't afford food. I'm okay with you stealing it because you need to survive, food to survive. You don't need comics to survive. They're not, just because you want a thing doesn't mean you get to have a thing if you can't afford it. As Josh said with the Porsche analogy. I'm sorry. It's just that's the way it is, and for us, and you're
justifying it. You're saying, well, now I pay for things. Well, there's not a statute of limitations. I used to burgle homes, but now I don't. Well, you still did. And no, it's not. As damaging as something like that, but it is in the same theoretical realm, I suppose. And I can see how this affects people who I know, and it's not okay. It's not okay.
I know. Look, people are allowed to change and repent and be like, I used to burgle homes, but I feel terrible, and now I don't do it anymore. And I was young and stupid, but I almost never hear that from pirators. I hear justifications, and I hear rationalizations. And if you go back to our website and search any pirating story, Jimsky did a whole series of interviews with pirators, and the comment sections were just apocalypses of people justifying illegally stealing comics.
Because they didn't want to think that they were doing something wrong, so they were doing boy, does that sound familiar? So using
every mental gymnastic to get to that point,
Yes, and that's what was happening, and that as a habit, that's no good. You need to I'm gonna see. You said you wouldn't get on a moral high horse, but I'm really good at doing that.
I said we would be on a moral high horse, but it's coming from a place of people who, like I said, have in the past downloaded music. I feel bad about it, and I haven't done it ever in 15 or 20 years.
You know what? I will tell you how I justified that back then. I justified it back then where I said I would only download something that I couldn't get anywhere. Like, there was like bootlegs or covers or something that you couldn't get on anything. And then if I got something I would buy, like if I got something I liked, that I would go buy the CD.
Which is just a justification. Yeah.
Exactly. That's my point. Like, that was wrong. And so what can I do? Well, I can admit, I shouldn't have done that, and B, I can stop doing it, and C, I can try to support those people that I was doing the opposite of supporting before.
Right.
And people make mistakes. You do, but you gotta own that mistake and understand it, I think.
But the real question is, no, I don't think suddenly if pirates stopped pirating, the industry would bloom. It's just most people are just like, people who pirate things like free things.
Yeah, but you know what? I think that here's the effect that I don't know that this has caused it, but I think that it influenced it. As the Marvel and DC became more preeminent and sort of took over more of the industry, and that lower tier of it, people can't make a living doing independent comics anymore. They can sometimes if they go through, they do a revenue share with Dark Horse or Image Comics or something like that. That part of the industry's gone. Like you've got Terry Moore. He's got to completely upend how he runs his business model, and I can't but help but imagine on a comic book that survives on a threshold of 8, 9, 10,000 copies a month, when all those people who are on the fence and not sure can just go pirate it and take a look at it. That is, I think that's making an impact, and I think that's why the content landscape looks like it does today to a certain extent.
Yeah, and I've heard every justification under the sun in their time at iFanboy. Yes. I wanted to see it first before I bought it. Like no other place do you get to do that. You don't get to pirate a movie before you decide you're going to go buy a ticket to see it. It's buyer beware. That's the system.
And then
that's how it works.
My personal favorite was, they're free at libraries. Well, the libraries pay for the one copy or the two copies, and that's how many people can read it at a time, and is not the same thing. It's not even close to the same thing. No. Right now, if I want to listen to an audiobook from a library, I have to wait in line because they've only purchased this many licenses, so that's many people have to be using it. Now, I can tell you right now, I understand that you can clone a digital file a million ways, and it won't change anything, but that's in order to have content exist, people have to pay for content. Or it gets worse and worse and worse, and that's not good.
Then we live in a future where it's just people yelling at you on YouTube.
Yep, and then I have to leave Facebook because I can't take it anymore.
So there you go. Thanks to Nick and to Seth for writing in. Both emails taking us to task in different ways. Those are always fun questions to answer. Contact@ifanboy.com is where you can do that.
Mm-hmm. Do you like the shows that we do? Well, there's other shows as well. Again, thanks to the patrons from earlier. I previously released a Talksplode episode, which is our interview podcast with writer, cartoonist Jean Luen Yang. That is up there. 1 hour, 22 minutes, 79 seconds different than the one before it, oddly, with Steve Lieber. And there's also this week, previous Booksplode, our book review podcast went up, and that is for Pulp, the new, I want to say Western, but it's not exactly a Western, Western and crime story from Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips. And if I might say so, I think they broke a little ground. They went to a slightly different place and gave us a little different than what we were expecting, but with still all the things you really loved. And it was a really fun, short conversation. So you should go check that out if you were curious about that book or just want to hear us talk about something else that we didn't talk about here.
Yep. And then next week, or this coming week, you're going to get the Animated Brain Trust discussion of Batman, Death in the Family, DC's first interactive animated short. And that's a very interesting conversation. You can check that out coming this week. In the following week, again, as we talked about last week, we have a special edition show every week this month. The last week of October, you're going to have the Media Explode, where we're probably going to, again, we don't know exactly what we're talking about, but Ted Lasso is going to be one of the main topics of conversation. So if you haven't watched that yet on Apple TV Plus, check it out. Half-hour episodes.
But you know what? You have to pay the $5 for a month or whatever,
Yep.
7-day trial. Watch Ted Lasso, and then get back to us, or wait for the Media Explode and then get back to us. But we're doing you all a favor, is what I'm saying right now.
And then finally, after that, I don't know what dates are what.
I think that will be
our
before
hangout.
this.
Before the Media Explode, after the Brain Trust, before the Media Explode, we have our monthly hangout. It's for the patrons. We open it up to everybody while we're still all locked down. It's October 24th. The main hangout's going to be 2 hours long, but the pre-show is also going to be 2 hours long. So it's going to be 4 hours of hangout time. If you want to do that, October 24th, it's a Saturday, and details will be found on our website and or our social media channels. But it's usually the hangout itself starts at 6 o'clock Pacific, 9 o'clock Eastern. That's usually when it happens.
The official show.
Yeah. Head over to iFanboy.com. You can find all of our podcasts. Also, I may have made a mistake doing the 2 hour hangout because so far half of the guys who usually come can't make it. Head over to iFanboy.com to find all the podcasts that we just talked about. They're all there, all of our old shows. In fact, if you want to go back and read, as we talked about, all of the old articles are there, and you can find all the old interesting discussions about pirating at iFanboy.com. Find out what the pick of the week is before the show comes out by liking Facebook.com/iFanboy and following at iFanboy on Twitter and at iFanboy Comics on Instagram, which also features the Best of the Week in Panels feature. And individually, we are CS Kilpatrick on Instagram and J.A. Flanagan on Instagram. And I also want to point out, again, neither one of us are on Twitter. So don't try to ask us questions there where you're not going to get answers. Also, don't DM us questions. Just send an email to contact@ifanboy.com for the show. That's the best way to get to us.
Yep.
Hey, we have a YouTube page, youtube.com/ifanboy.
Didn't update this.
It's okay. We've been uploading our old video shows, the minis from 2008 and the old video show from full-length show from 2007. They're being uploaded 3 times a week. The mini from this past week was the mini about me finding old Kirby Captain America comics at a small town auction. Then there was the full-length show that was the first year anniversary show. So we returned to the top 5 trade paperbacks you should own. So this was another top 5. This was like the next top 5. I believe that's where New Frontier came into play. And then finally, we had a voicemail show, the semi-regular voicemail show, which is always fun. We answered voicemails with no prep whatsoever. So that was always fun.
As opposed to normally.
Well, normally we know what's in the script. Ron would just pull voicemails, and you and I would have no idea what was coming.
That's fun. Also, it
totally
requires less work. If you like this show, write us a review. See what we did there was we turned a lack of time into a marketing point.
Sure.
That's brilliant. If you like this show, you can write a review or leave a star rating over at Apple Podcasts or wherever else. That's the thing. I think Amazon has podcasts now, and we're on there. And I'm sure that you can leave a review there if you want to. Or YouTube. That's another place where that can happen. Better yet, you can tell people about us, your friends, your mom, your comic store owner. If your comic store owner doesn't really know or like podcasts or care about it, I don't know that they're paying enough attention. I'm not saying they have to like us, but they should know about it because it's a good source for information about the books. But I don't know. I don't know what people should do. You could tell them, though, is the point. Or social media, something like that. We like when people let other people know about it. And to this day, it is always surprising that somebody is listening who came on recently. And recently means within the last 10 years. Like, I'm amazed.
There's a lot of people like that.
I know that, but it still weirds me out. In my head, I just assume that the people who are in the car are the people who were in the car at the beginning, minus the people who got out of the car. And I just assume that's who it is, and I know that that's not the case. And so then I think, well, boy, we talk about a lot of things from the past that they would have no idea about, and that can't be any good for them.
They got to take their medicine.
Listen. That's my favorite thing that's happened today so far. I'm Josh.
I'm Connor.
All right, have a good week. Take care of yourself and other people.